And that's why you keep seeing all of these robber baron billionaires, one after the other, bending the knee, making the trek to Mar-a-Lago and giving Trump $1 million checks for his inauguration. That's why you're seeing that. It's pay to play. It's, hey, keep the corporate welfare coming, keep the subsidies and government checks coming, keep the tax cuts and the deregulation coming, and we will be your servants.
Author and podcaster Scott Galloway went on CNN and MSNBC to talk about income inequality and how the robber barons in our country will be using the Trump administration to rob us more. Kyle Kulinski on his show Secular Talk broke all this down. We'll take a look at clips from Secular Talk. I will share my thoughts on this as well. Let's get into it.
There's a professor at NYU by the name of Scott Galloway, and he's been making the rounds on CNN and MSNBC, and he's been sounding the alarm. He's given us a dire warning here. Let's listen.
A lot of these tech billionaires are kind of following or trying to play catch up, I guess, with Elon Musk and making inroads with the new administration.
And the best trade of 2024 was Elon Musk put $250 million into the Trump campaign. And since then, the value of his companies and his stake in those companies is up by about $140 billion. So that's about a 5,600% return.
And that's not any change in in Tesla, in the output or anything.
Nothing to do with the company.
Right.
Nothing to do with their operating margins, their innovation, their sales. It's based on a general assumption that America has become a full kleptocracy like Russia, that the largest, deepest pocketed customer in the history of our modern economy, the U.S. government, will effectively is now pay to play and will shuffle contracts, monies, and impose regulatory punishment on the competitors to the companies who do not invest in the Republican Party or in his inaugural campaign, as evidenced by the fact that very few of these tech executives invested in the inaugural campaign fund for Biden, and they are all doing it for Trump.
In other words, that's how and why Elon Musk is now the richest man in the world by far. What he just described right there. That this is irrational market hype based on the fact that people know Elon is snuggled up to power, snuggled up directly to Trump, has a direct line not only to Trump, but also to the Republican Party, which is the governing party. This is the recognition that, okay, you win, right? So give him more money, give him more power, and anybody who bends the knee and kisses the ring of MAGA is going to get that same treatment. This is complete and utter oligarchy, kleptocracy. Now it's out in the open. We've been in oligarchy for a while, but back in the day, there was a veneer over it, right? This veneer of democracy and capitalism. Now that veneer is gone. Now it's all out in the open, and you have the world's richest man helping to direct policy in this country.
Gone full kleptocrat. And if you don't think this hurts everyone, this raises prices, and for the little guy or the companies that don't want to engage in this type of pay for play, it hurts them. This will increase prices and weaken our democracy. This is absolutely no different than how Putin became the wealthiest man in the world.
Do you think this is a long-term change in the political direction of these tech companies, or would they shift course when the president-elect leaves office?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's two things going on here. This is good for shareholder value for Meta to not have to live up to the standards of traditional media companies. News Corp decided to circulate misinformation around Dominion voting machines, despite the fact they knew that was false information. They were sued because it resulted in economic harm against Dominion, and they were punished to the tune of about $750 million. What happened at News Corp on Fox was a dumpster fire compared to the nuclear mushroom cloud of what took place on Meta, yet Meta is immune. So what you have is these companies that are circulating or kind of a misinformation lollapalooza, quite frankly, are just running away with it in terms of profitability, in terms of shareholder value. So they're totally driven by shareholder value. They're doing their job. We're not doing our job in terms of electing representatives who have the backbone to stand up to attempts to weaponize the government and still believe in a democratic America where there's competition, where misinformation, where a lack of truth, a lack of trust in our institutions remain pillars of our society. That seems to be eroding, but they will go where the puck goes, and that is whatever increases the value of their shares.
And Kyle Kulinski and Scott Galloway are exactly right with what they're saying here. You know, we've had corruption for a long time in our country, in our system. But this is going to be a grift and corruption on a scale that we've never seen before. I heard the other day, and these aren't exact numbers, but that Trump's cabinet, if they're confirmed, their net worth is like $350 billion. Now, obviously, a very large chunk of that is Elon Musk, but still, $350 billion. Joe Biden's cabinet was something like 160 million. So not even a billion, 160 million. Whereas Trump's cabinet, almost $500 billion. So this is going to be, these MAGA people who really believe that Trump is fighting for them and he cares about the little guy and he's going to help them out. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that there are people who actually still think that, but we just have to hope that all of these oligarchs have not just completely hollowed out the country at the end of 4 years.
You keep seeing all of these robber baron billionaires, one after the other, bending the knee, making the trek to Mar-a-Lago and giving Trump $1 million checks for his inauguration. That's why you're seeing that. It's pay to play. It's, hey, keep the corporate welfare coming, keep the subsidies and government checks coming, keep the tax cuts and the deregulation coming, and we will be your servants. We will be your servants. All right, but he's not done yet. He's got more for us. So here's Scott Galloway, this time on MSNBC. And this is, for Morning Joe, this is a massive truth bomb. Here we go.
Once you get above a certain level of wealth, you get no incremental happiness. So why on earth would you not go back to a tax policy of the 60s, 70s, and 80s, where, say, above, pick a big number, 10 million, you actually pay more than 10%, maybe more than 20%, maybe more than 50%, because the difference between 30,000 a year for a household and 50,000 is enormous to the well-being of that household. Low-income kids in low-income households have higher resting blood pressure, but the difference between making 10 million a year and 15 million a year offers you no happiness. But these individuals have weaponized government, and we risk revolution, whether it's CEOs being murdered in the street, whether it's a
And I got to stop for a minute here. It's just the look on Morning Joe's face there, Joe Scarborough, just like, what? The difference between 10 and 15 million? 15 million is more than 10 million. Of course you would be happier with that. He just, these guys cannot compute this. And it's pretty amazing that Scott Galloway they're even letting him say this on TV. Other than Bernie Sanders, who they just laugh at as, oh, look at this old communist Bernie Sanders. Other than Bernie Sanders, like, you do not see on mainstream network television this type of talk about tax policy and taxing the rich at the rates that we used to back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But it's great to see.
Me Too movement that had righteous components of it, or Black Lives Matter. What are these movements? They are targeting the wealthy. We are in the midst of a series of small revolutions to correct income inequality. And the reason we put an insurrectionist and a rapist in office is because for the first time in our nation's history, a 30-year-old man or woman isn't doing as well as his or her parents were at 30. Why? Because the majority of households are having the oxygen sucked out of the room, such that a small number of individuals and a small number of companies can be worth more than nation states. Income inequality is out of control. Our tax policy has gone full oligarch.
That room is not ready for those kinds of truth bombs.
No, they are not.
That room is not prepared for that. Because these are all, good little loyal servants to the establishment and to the donor class. That's exactly who's in that room right now. So you could tell they're a little bit like, whoa, dog, what the hell? We were not expecting all that. So I actually have a slight disagreement with him there. I think that the anger that you're going to see bubbling up and boiling over, I think that anger is going to appear more scattershot, going to appear more random, going to appear more disconnected from any particular issue, right? Because in this country, we don't have an awakened class consciousness, right? And that's why you see the pendulum swing from the left to the right. You see Obama winning, and you see Trump winning, and then you see Biden winning, and you see Trump winning again. The consistent part of every election is change. People want big change, and they don't know where to go to get that big change, right? Bernie offered it, but he wasn't able to become president. And now we're dealing with the fallout of that. We're dealing with the consequences of that. And now, between witnessing firsthand climate collapse, which is happening right in front of us, witnessing the absolute implosion of our institutions, which I now think you could argue is complete after January 6th and the fake electors slate and Trump's 91 criminal charges and the Supreme Court basically granting him full immunity and now him coming back in charge. The George Floyd protests were really just the beginning. Occupy Wall Street was just the beginning. The George Floyd protests were just the beginning. I think you are going to see real strife. And I also happen to think we're in the biggest market bubble in the history of our economy, worse than 1929. We're going to talk about that in the future with Ben Norton on Crystal Kyle and Friends. But the bubble is colossal. And as soon as that bubble bursts, you're talking about real pain and devastation, the likes of which we haven't seen since arguably 1929 and the Great Depression. That's what we're looking at. And the problem is, yes, people feel like they're not getting a fair shot. People feel like the system doesn't make sense, but that has not been harnessed in a positive direction yet. So when you see a fallout occur, when you see violence in the streets, when you see protests and riots, when you see the collapse of social order, it's not going to be as nice and neat as we would all like to think. It's not going to be as organized as, say, the civil rights movement was, where they're all out there protesting the Million Man March and they have clear goals and they have a clear reason for being out there and clear policy aims. We are not going to see that. I mean, it's on us to give it direction, to give it order, to give it clear policy goals, right? Universal basic income, 4-day work week, universal health care for everybody, higher wages, right to a union, etc. It's on us to do that, but it's just going to look like chaos. It's just going to look like mayhem. It's just going to look like social collapse. It's just going to look like everything's falling apart. I mean, you tell me, we're seeing some of it right now with the climate collapse as to what's happening in LA. Does it look orderly? Does it look like people are connecting the right dots? I mean, the reality is this is all because of climate change, but you don't see that that's the initial reaction.
I think Kyle is really correct with what he's saying here. I hope he's wrong that things get to be like 1929. You know, I hope it doesn't get that bad, but I think you are going to see some real anger from people over the next 4 years, because we've had a period for a long time, especially with the Democrats, but even the Republicans understood this to a degree, I think, that they knew they had to throw people a bone. Yeah, we can steal this money over here, but we still have to give the underlings something, you know. And particularly the Republicans have become so brazen. You know, go back to the pandemic when they were openly on television saying, grandma's had a good life, but she's not as important as the economy. Sorry, grandma. You know, people have got to go back to work. You know, I never really thought I would have seen politicians be that brazen. And now you have, as Kyle Kulinski is pointing out here, he didn't say exactly this, but you have the fires now in LA, and you have people losing their homes, and the insurance companies are saying, sorry, we canceled your insurance 2 months ago. So you're on your own. We're not going to cover this. And now Republican politicians coming out and saying, I don't think California deserves the money. You know, we don't like the way they vote, so we don't want to give them money. That's going to make people angry. You know, we saw what happened with the health insurance CEO here recently. And, you know, people lose their homes, and not health insurance companies, but homeowners insurance policies are no longer paying out, and these people have nothing. They're going to be really, really angry. So I think we're going to see some dark, scary things over the next 4 years. And as Kyle Kulinski is saying, people aren't always connecting the dots, but what people have to understand is it's the incredibly rich. And we're not talking, you know, even somebody that makes $1 million a year, $10 million a year, that really is not the super rich. They're nothing compared to somebody like Elon Musk or any of these other billionaires, many of whom are going to be part of Trump's administration. There was a post the other day, and people got really mad at him, but I think for the wrong reason, James Woods, who, he's a big Trumper and people don't like him because of that. But he posted that he has a friend in LA that apparently their house wasn't burning down, but they were renovating their home and they were looking for another house to rent. And they had a house all lined up. They went to sign the papers for the rent. It was supposed to be $18,000 a month. Now, I know $18,000 a month is insane. They got there and they said, sorry, the rent is now $30,000 a month. So they were just, it's illegal for them to do that. And hopefully those people go to prison. But they were, saying, not 18,000 anymore, 30,000 now. And James Woods was saying, the vultures are circling, and people were saying, oh, you're rich, who cares, and your friend's rich and all that. That's true. But if you can get a James Woods or a James Woods friend, maybe they can afford $18,000 a month, but maybe even at their income, they can't afford $30,000 a month. And those people say, hey, I'm getting screwed over, just like the person whose rent is $2,000 a month, and now they're charging $5,000. If you can get those people together to see that James Woods, even though he's a rich movie star, really has no power. He's not going to be able to own members of Congress the way that Elon Musk can. So if you can get people lower income up to somebody who makes even a few $1 million a year, certainly people making 6 figures a year, to say, hey, we're all on the same side. It's us against the super, super rich who have hundreds of millions and billions of dollars, who want to own everything and want to steal as much as they can from all of the rest of us. Then maybe you can have some change in this country. But until then, nothing is ever really going to happen. Let me know what you think about what Scott Galloway had to say. Let me know what you think about Kyle Kulinski's thoughts on this and my thoughts as well. Leave me a comment about this and make sure to like and subscribe. I'm almost at 50,000. I just got a couple hundred more to go to 50,000. So if you haven't subscribed yet and you would like to do so, please do so. This is Chris on Culture. I'll see you in the next video.